Thank you for tuning in to view this video that highlights new features of the FY26 circuit breaker claim system. This video is intended for people who are already familiar with the online claim system, and it will only briefly walk through and highlight new functionality. So if you've not previously used the online system, we strongly suggest you put this video aside and instead start with the more fundamental training videos that are available on the DESE YouTube channel. But for those of you that are interested in hearing just the new highlights, I'm Shannon Scully from the Office of District and School Finance, and I'll be going through these 7 highlights one at a time. And the way I'll be doing this is by keeping this presentation in one tab in this browser window and using the other tab in the same browser window to demonstrate the functionality as we move along. So the first area I want to highlight is that there is improved help text, and we've embedded a number of links to training modules within the claim system. So for example, here you are on your claim details page. You'll notice that there's a number of new eye icons next to fields, and if you hover over those, they'll provide an explanation of what that individual field is there and telling you. So if you want to know the difference between total cost, adjusted costs, and net costs, just hover over and the explanation will be provided for you. You'll also see on some pages there's a link to an individual training module. This one, for example, if you click on this, it will bring you to the module that tells you how to apply collaborative cumulative credit on your claim. Other areas that have been enhanced significantly with help text, for example, if you go into the page where you would add placements for a student, this is the page where all of the placement types are listed, and you'll select the radio button next to the one where you want to create your specific type of placement. Each one of those has off to the right here a link to the individual training video that tells you how to create that particular kind of placement. So for example, if you want a refresher on how to enter a placement at an individual student approved program using an ISP authorization, there's a link right here that will bring you to that training video. And then similarly, if once you've gone into each individual placement type, and I'm just clicking on the LEA Collaborative for an example, you'll see again in here text that you can click on that will explain to you what it is that you're supposed to be entering for that individual field. So for example, annual rate on an LEA Collaborative placement reminds you to enter the annual rate for the entire school year or the entire ESY program, even if the student attended for fewer days. So this is specific to the type of placement, and it tells you what to enter right in that field. The next feature that I want to highlight is dynamic program searches in placement creation. So if I go back to that same example, here we are on a screen that would allow us to create an LEA collaborative placement. And the first box here is asking you to find the LEA or collaborative where the student attended. You could, in searching for that collaborative, scroll through using this on the side to find the name of the collaborative, but it's a rather lengthy list. Now a feature exists where you can begin typing the name of the collaborative, and what appears beneath will dynamically search based on that term. So if I wanted to search, for example, bi-county collaborative or BICO, I'd begin by typing in here BI, and you'll see that the collaboratives that are available to me, or the LEA collaboratives that are available to me, have already been narrowed just based on the B and I characters that I have typed in. You'll also notice that it brings up options that B and I are obviously at the beginning of the term, such as Bi-County Collaborative and Billerica, but it also provides a search that shows you where BI appears in the middle of the term, such as in Abington and Quabbin. So that's an interesting feature, and we hope that it helps narrow down how to find the programs. I would like to also demonstrate that when you're searching for a program using this dynamic search, you can search for the program either by the program name, which I just demonstrated, or by the program code. So for example, if I was going to add a placement at a private approved program, it's really important that you get the program correct. So again, if the student, for example, was at JRI, I could begin to type JRI, but you'll see a number of different JRI options appear. At the end of the program in the list below, you'll see that the program code is listed for each one. So it's really important that you make sure that the program code matches the program that you're being billed for when you're claiming the tuition. I also want to demonstrate that in addition to searching for the term JRI, for example, I could begin to type in what I know to be the program code for the program that the student attends, and it will narrow for me to the program that I want to select right there in the list. And then I'll just click on that and it will be populated. The next feature that I want to highlight is validation and error checking enhancements. You may recall in the claim system last year, we had a number of different reports that would tell you where there were issues with the claim and things that you needed to correct before you were able to submit the claim. We hope we've made this easier by showing you one area called validations. So I'm back on the front page of the claim, and if you see in this area, there's a 3 dash. And if you go into this validations, it will list a number of different issues with your claim that will need to be resolved before you're able to submit it. So instead of going through and doing our reports 1, 2, 3, 4 that you may recall from last year, now all of the errors that need resolution are in this validations area. So you'll note that there's a number of different columns. First, we'll give you the SACID of the student and the student's name. It will tell you what the error is. So for example, here we see Neville Longbottom has a placement that's missing its OSD authorization. You can scroll over using this search here, or using this feature here. And not only will it tell you what the error is, but it will tell you how to resolve the error. So on this bottom example, it's telling you you're missing an OSD authorization and that you need to associate the OSD authorization for the expenses to that placement, and that you cannot submit those expenses without a valid authorization. For others, for example, it's telling you here that the nursing hours exceed 6.5 hours per day, and you need to provide an explanation for that high number of nursing hours, and so on. You'll also see, if you scroll further, that the placement number is listed right here, and that's a link. So you have an opportunity just to click directly in here to go to the placement to resolve the error. You could also go and search for the student by his SACID and then resolve it based on the placement. But this gives you a nice link directly to it. So I'd click on this placement and then I would associate the OSD authorization with that. So we hope this provides a reasonable list of validations that need to be cleared. And there's also a check up here to make sure that if you have received any cumulative credit and applied that to your claim, that the full balance of that cumulative credit have been applied to placements within your claim. So that's something also important. You'll make sure that you have a green check mark here, or there'll be additional things or you'll need to resolve that prior to submitting the claim. The next feature I want to explain is that now we offer in-district placement cloning. So in-district, just for that one placement type, you're able to clone services from the prior year onto the current year. So for this, I'm going to go into a student, Jaron Duran, that I know had in-district placements on my circuit breaker claim last year. And the idea here is that instead of having to individually find and add those services to a new placement on this year's claim, you can instead just copy the services onto this year's claim. So I would go into placements. And again, so I want to create a new in-district placement for this student. The first box that will come up is to ask me, do I want to make an entirely new placement for this student? And for many students, you probably will. But if the student had a placement last year that you'd like to copy as a baseline, you can go to Clone Placement, click Next. You'll get a list. If there's more than one school year placement and an ESY placement, it'll ask you which you'd like to copy. So I want to copy the in-district placement for the school year and hit Next. And this shows me the services that I claimed for this student last year. I'll look at the current IEP and decide which services have been maintained that I want to continue for this year, and I will check the boxes next to those. And once I've done that, I will hit next. Here I'll be required to enter information about the current IEP for the student. So something from this year. I'm just making these dates up. Very specific about the date. Oh, and very specific, it adds up the number of days to make sure that that's available. And there it goes to tell me that it's adding these services to a new placement for this student in this year. As best practice, please be sure, once the placement is created, to go back in and review that placement to make sure that all of the services that are on there, that are on that placement, are appropriate for this year, including the number of hours that are being claimed, the service type that's being claimed, and this particular type of service. So if not, I would have an opportunity to go in here and edit these to make sure that they match what is being received this year. The next feature to highlight is that we have provided a district dashboard and reports that are available to districts. So if you go to the front of your claim, and I'm up here in the top toolbar, the first option is for you to get a list of the claims. The one right below that is for a district dashboard. So if you click on that, you'll be brought to a dashboard that gives you highlights or information about any of the districts that you have access to. Upon first glance, it might appear like there's not a lot of information here, but this is dependent on your browser. You may have to scroll down to find the district reports, so be sure to look for that. And here you'll find a number of different reports that are available. There's a different training module that will walk you through in more detail what each of these provide. But the highlights are that there's a report here that gives you a summary of the costs that you've claimed based on a student. This is the same information, a detailed report. It's again by student, but it gives you additional fields. Might be a little busy for some folks, but if you'd like all of the detail, that's available to you. A report that gives you all of the placements that you've reported. A report that tells you any cost shares that you've reported and the amounts that have been paid by other entities. Where you've applied collaborative cumulative credit. And then information about transportation services, because this is an extraordinary relief claim. We don't actually have any placements in this sample district related to transportation. When there's no data related to the report type, it will say we can't draw this chart because there's no data. So to view the report in its entirety, you would click on this button here that says View Report. That would open up the report. Gives you a number of different fields. And if you'd like to export this report into Excel, you can do that by clicking the down caret up here and hitting the export button, and you have an option to export this data into Excel. The next feature to highlight is some changes that we've made to certifying and submitting your claim. So if I go back to the claim, this tab, number 4, Certify and Submit, is where you'll go to submit the claim once you have all of the information on the claim that you're ready to send to our office. First, it's important to know that with FY26, anyone who can log into your district's claim has the ability to certify and submit the claim. Previously, we had restricted that privilege to only one person per district, but now anyone can log in and submit the claim when it's ready. One of the things that person will need to do down here is click these check marks to affirm each of the statements above it is true. And you'll notice that one of them in the certification statement says, I am authorized to submit claims on behalf of the school district. So the person submitting it will need to affirm that as part of the claim submission. You'll also notice a difference on this page since last year is that we're being very explicit to make sure you understand the students that are included and the students that are excluded from your claim. In some instances, you may decide that you will exclude a student even though you have added expenses to the claim because those expenses are not in a position to be submitted. So for example, we saw earlier that Neville Longbottom was listed in our validation reports as missing the OSD authorization. If we do not have the authorization for the $106,000 of tuition expenses related to that ISP, we may exclude Neville from being submitted with the claim in order to be able to submit all of the other expenses. Another option would be to delete that placement for Neville. You don't have to delete him entirely, just the problematic placements. If he had other placements that you wanted to submit, that's another way to do it. In any regard, there'll be a list of the included and excluded students, and you'll need to click that you have verified that here. And you'll also click that you know which cycle you'll be submitting for. So you see, you'll hit relief submit here. And then once these are all checked and you've affirmed the information is correct, you will hit submit. And then finally, the last thing that I want to highlight, for FY26, every year the claim threshold is increased based on statute, and that's based on an inflation factor. And for FY26, the per student claim threshold has been set at $53,431. Those are the 7 highlights that we wanted to walk through here. If you have any questions or need any additional information, please review the refreshed training modules that are available on the DESE YouTube page. And as always, feel free to reach out to the circuit breaker liaison assigned to your district if there's anything further that we can do to help support you and getting your claims into us. Thanks very much.